Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. First thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce our new member, Bob Youngren. Welcome, Bob. Would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
Welcome. Yeah, I'm a firefighter in the town of Shrewsbury. I've been here for my entire life living in the town. I live on the lake. Through my job, I'm also a hazard material technician. So I've done a lot of mitigation and emergency response to hazard materials, waterways, things like that. Quick learner. I'm willing to go along and help you guys out best I can and hopefully learn some things along the way.
Well, we're glad to have you.
You're welcome.
All right. First item on the agenda, review and approve minutes.
No minutes to approve.
Sign bills.
No bills to sign.
Moving right along, meetings and hearings. The first hearing is a public hearing regarding the request of determination of applicability filed by George Stalcup, 5 Water Street, Shrewsbury, for the construction of a fence at 5 Water Street. I believe they're going to be coming here a little bit later.
Yes, the
so
applicant is not available this time, so they'll come later in the evening.
We'll just hold that till later on. And we have a new public hearing.
Okay. Notice is hereby given in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Town of Shrewsbury Wetlands Bylaw and Regulations that Deborah Sklartz, 15 Woodway Drive, Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, has filed a request for determination of applicability for the removal of 7 trees within the 100-foot buffer zone of an intermittent stream at 15 Woodway Drive.
If you
Hi
guys
there.
would like to come up, you can sit right at this desk.
Yep, come right up. Just state your name if you're going to speak.
Deborah Sklars.
David Sklars.
Okay. All right. What do we have?
Well, that's our plot plan. We have 7 trees, 3 of which, would you call it 3 or 4, Elaine?
So a couple of the trees are like double or more than double trunk trees. So we were counting by just base. So there is one large tree that's a double trunk tree that's being proposed, and it's just counted as one. Let me see if I can pull up some photos.
And the roots are showing and they're dead. And they look like they're going to come down with any type of storm, windy.
Those are the most concerning right there. Those are dead. So if you look at the plot plan, number 1's the furthest to the left, and then it goes across 2, 3, 4. 4 is still alive, but it's in danger of falling on our neighbor's house.
Okay.
And then this is the remainder of the.
And those.
And then, yeah, on the other side, probably starting from the furthest on the left,
Okay.
that's 7, 6, up the hill's 5, and then 4. And that number 4, while it looks straight up, it's a little bit difficult to see in that picture, but it's almost growing like a candy cane.
Yeah, it
where
grows
it's straight
over.
and goes across. So the more it grows, the heavier it's going to get.
Were these looked at by a tree, an arborist or anybody, or did you have a tree company going to come remove these? You
We-
haven't looked at any, nobody's looked at
We
it?
figured we'd come first to you people because we need approval to go ahead and do anything. So that's what our thought process was. We haven't put it out to bid, but it would be a professional company, to follow any rules that we need to do.
Okay. Okay, Bob, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Diane?
So with the, so sometimes it's really good to leave the trees cut pretty high so that they can provide habitat for animals and insects that need a place to live. So if you could keep that in mind, that would be pretty good. It's hard to see in the photograph the trees that are dead are dead. Yes.
Mhm.
The trees that are not dead, it's kind of a little harder in the photographs to see, what's happening that makes them problematic.
Even the root systems are exposed.
Those are the ones that are
Okay.
dead on the right-hand side.
What about the one going over to Bob, but I'm
That's-
curious.
Do you have, can we show the pictures?
Oh, yeah, of course. Is that the one you'd like, or?
That's the
Okay.
picture. So the one the furthest to the right is, the ground below it is eroding away. So the larger the tree gets, the more weight, it's more likely to come down.
Oh,
Just hate
So
to see
it's
someone
on,
get
it's on
hurt.
an embankment.
yeah. Right, it looks like a kind of a steep embankment.
Right there it is.
And it looks like the embankment hasn't been stabilized with any plants or anything.
No,
Well, then that may be why that's such a problem. So if they do come down, you may still want to,
Oh, absolutely.
To
We'll put-
stabilize
we'll
the
put some-
embankment.
Absolutely. We'll put things back there that more, better useful, that is not as scary to fall on someone's house.
okay, very good.
Martha?
Is that the neighbor's house in the background? I see a light area that looks like it's angled.
That's not the actual
That's all
neighbor's house we're
woods.
talking about. Those woods go to the back of the house in the back. The neighbor's house is,
if the neighbor's house is right here, if that tree were to fall, it would fall onto their house.
Okay.
Onto their house.
onto the house. We're trying to stop someone from getting hurt and at the same time do the right thing.
Yeah. So I agree with Diane about the value of leaving some of the trunk for
Okay.
wildlife habitat. Even if the tree is dead, as it decays, there will be beetles and things come in, and the wood will soften up and birds will be able to nest in there and eat the beetles. So it's great wildlife habitat.
It's a bird sanctuary. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's a great bird sanctuary. There's a lot of birds.
Yeah. You still have to be concerned with safety too,
Yes.
your structures and your neighbors. The roots as they exist are providing some stability to that bank. So in addition to leaving, to the argument for leaving some of the stem, I would also not take the roots out, and look to plant some shrubs or some small trees, some red bud
We
or
would love
something
to.
back there. Yeah,
We would love to.
yeah, because you don't want your yard to erode away either.
No.
The whole thing is within the 100-foot buffer zone? Is that, I didn't get a sense of where the
So-
buffer zone was in the
It
drawings.
is pretty, let me see if I can pull up
The plot plan, I had to draw it in because it will dry up, but
there's
it's,
a line. Yeah.
But not this summer.
Yes, yes, it's still.
in July.
Okay, so the line,
The line across is I call it a
the
brook.
stream bed,
Stream.
Stream bed.
yes. As much as it can be called, it was dry, when I went out to take a look at the house a couple days ago.
Okay.
And it is, demarcated as an intermittent stream on USGS.
Okay. And just a word about the tree that's growing like a candy cane. That may have lost limbs or had another tree fall on it or something that deformed its growth.
I think it was the vines that grew up and tied into another tree. I mean, there were these strong, strong vines that had grown up and almost like pulled it that way. So it grew that way.
Okay.
I think it has bittersweet growing up.
Bittersweet.
Yeah, I was going to guess bittersweet or grape, one or the other. Yeah, I don't have any problems with this, except for the suggestions of leaving the trunk.
Be happy
and
to.
if you can leave 8 feet of trunk, that's awesome.
Okay.
And stabilizing the bank afterwards. And do you have any problem? Well, as you put it out to bid, you'll see companies that will have cranes, won't even have to get into your yard, or maybe you'll find companies that can do it by hand. There are people who climb trees these days.
As least invasive as possible.
Yeah. Okay. I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chris?
No other questions?
Oh, yeah?
I don't believe I have any questions.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we issue a negative determination of applicability for the removal of 7 trees at 15 Woodway Drive,
With the condition?
with the condition that the at least 8 feet of trunk be left and the bank be stabilized with plantings.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. You're all set.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Leah will send you something, and then you'll be able to move on
Yes, I'll send
after
you your
get
negative,
notice.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Negative is good, it means there's no more steps.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I can also send you, we have a native plant guide by the
Oh,
town,
perfect.
so we can send you that over, and you can pick a couple
All
of
right.
natives that
That'll
will
be helpful, thank you.
cover.
Thank you again.
Okay, we have a new public hearing.
Notice is hereby given in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Town of Shrewsbury Wetlands Bylaw and Regulations that Raul Kazbekar, 133 Stony Hill Road, Shrewsbury, has filed a notice of intent for the construction of a home addition and deck within the 100-foot buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland at 133 Stony Hill Road.
Hey guys, does this work for you all?
Sure.
Perfect. For the record, this is Andrew Tebow with Goddard Consulting. I'm the wetland scientist and the representative, and Rahul and Sheetal, the homeowners at 133 Stony Hill, are with us today. I have two visuals for you guys tonight. First is just a colored version of the existing conditions plan that you received with the notice of intent. The property you see here is 133 Stony Hill Road. It's a 12,575 square foot lot with a driveway coming in off Stony Hill Road. There's an existing roughly 1,200 square foot house on the property, and there's about 470 square feet of patio, deck, and porch space off the rear of the property. We were out there in May of this year. It was May 17th that I delineated the wetlands out here. We'll see the line that we have here in blue when we hung about an 11 flag series. This property, as you see here, has a very nice defined limit between the historically developed lawn space to the wetlands. There's a nice stone wall that runs about the limit of the lawn that you see here in green. It's about a 5 to 6 foot grade change down to a bordering vegetated wetland system associated with an internal mapped intermittent stream channel. We had run stream stats on that to confirm that it was indeed an intermittent stream channel, and so we delineated the exterior wetland portion. As seen on the site plan, that places the 100-foot buffer zone that you see here in blue at about the front of the house. The 15-foot no disturb zone on the property is fully interior of the woods, and then the 30-foot no structure comes up into slight portions of the existing lawn. And so what the applicants are proposing is to reuse portions of that deck space, the patio and the porch space, and portions of the existing lawn to construct what's about an 839 square foot addition off the rear of the property. We were able to locate it in a way that utilized the full 470 square feet of that patio that was already an impervious surface, which leads to about 369 square feet of impervious surface generation with the proposed addition. This is located fully within the limits of existing lawn off the rear of the house. There is no trees to be removed, no vegetation, and there's no grading that's required. It's a very flat area through the lawn there. And so what we did is we proposed the erosion control line to be located up gradient of the 30-foot no structure to ensure that all the work that occurs is fully up within the lawn and no work goes into those bylaw resource areas at all. That's about what we have. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, Bob?
I have no questions. I did go down and take a look at that area. I mean, it is very wet behind there, but there's a big distance between, like you said, between the house, so.
There is, yeah. So there's a rock wall that runs kind of right along the lawn that we see here. It's about a 5 to 6 foot grade change. It's a nice hill that pitches down towards the resource areas back there. So and we included some photos in the notice of intent as well, as far as seeing some of the flags along that slope there, just to provide the commission a bit of a visual as well.
All set?
Questions, yes.
Diane?
So, the addition does increase the footprint of the house a little bit, right?
It does. So The addition itself is 839 square feet, but they're reusing 470 square feet of previously used areas. So it's about 369 square feet, fully within the lawn outside of the 30.
And so the portion that's closest to, I guess, the 30-foot,
Right, that you see here?
yeah, that's
Yep.
right. That is a patio?
So the patio, you can see in a dash line here, the surveyors created a plan that kind of overlaid the existing versus
No,
the
the,
proposed.
that's a new deck?
Oh, this here, yeah, so this is an elevated deck. It's gonna be on wood pilings with a staircase down. It's underlain by lawn. There's not gonna be a new patio in this area. We're removing the patio, so the area that's under that deck will remain pervious.
Okay, that was going to be my question.
Yes,
Thank you.
exactly.
Thank
Trying
you
to
very much.
design this in a way that is the least impactful, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Set? Martha?
What's the plan for dealing with rainwater on the new addition?
Because it's a single-family house, it's exempt from stormwater standards, and so what we did was, in designing this, we tried to use our best management practices in decreasing and minimizing where that footprint was created. So that's why we used the 470 square foot location of the patio. So we felt that a 369 square foot over existing lawn that wouldn't be held to stormwater standards as a single-family house would be essentially exempt from those standards.
And what's your plan for it? Because you are regardless of whether you're susceptible to the standards or not, what happens to the water that falls on that new addition? Where is it going to go?
Of course, yeah. So the property itself generally pitches towards the rear that you see here. So during construction, we had a robust erosion control plan. It's an 8-inch straw wattle with an entrenched silt fence, double erosion control around the entire rear of the house, around the existing lawn. Once this is constructed and it's all stabilized, we have the full area of existing lawn. The grade is not changing, and we maintain our woodland buffer. So we feel in analyzing this project that it's not creating a significant portion of new runoff, being that it's a very small increase in impervious surfaces, and there is no grading or redirection of any water based on where it currently runs off the property.
Will you have gutters?
Yes.
Will there be a dry well? Or
There is currently no stormwater management proposed. They're not required to do so under the act of the bylaw.
I would make a suggestion of putting in either a dry well or a rain garden. Just as, that's a suggestion from a member of the Conservation Commission,
course.
to the homeowners. Thank you. All set.
Chris?
I echo Martha's comments. But also, what type of, I didn't hear like the footers of the addition, are they poured concrete? I didn't hear that mentioned.
Yeah, the engineers have not given us a detail on the
Okay.
exact design yet. I would probably would be providing that ahead of construction, or that's something that we can absolutely supplement for you guys.
Okay. And then the same would be true with the deck. Is it gonna be just techno blocks or whatever? Or gonna be something that's gonna be under like a 6x6 post?
That's exactly what they are, underlain by lawn.
Okay. All right. No other questions?
Well, I think we really should see what type of foundation you're going to have before we approve this. I think that needs to be part of the submission. And
By all
any-
means, we can supplement with that information.
And then any extra material that's generated by that should be removed from the site.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I can have our engineers take a look at that, and they can provide a bit more detail on some of the construction style.
And maybe take in consideration Martha's comment with something to do with I know you don't have to do it, but something related to the runoff from the gutters. Maybe you could do a small rain garden or something to infiltrate that.
Sure, yeah, and the homeowners are here as well. I'm happy to discuss with them after and see what we can come up with.
Sure. Okay. Alea,
I don't think I have any questions, no.
anybody in the public have any questions? All right, so will you ask for a continuance to our next meeting in September?
Yes, we will, and we'll provide these responses by that point.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. We'll see you in September.
Great, thank you for your time.
Okay, our next meeting, we have a public hearing regarding the abbreviated notice of intent filed by Cerny Ramker, 31 Pal Drive, Shrewsbury, for the removal of trees and restoration of plantings at 31 Pal Drive. Sorry if I didn't do a good job with your name.
I also sent a presentation to Ms. Kasur.
Yes, let me pull that up. Okey doke.
Good evening, all. My name is Srini Ramkumar. I am the owner of 31 Pal Drive. I just made a brief presentation of what I am requesting the permit for. And I also, in the previous meeting, I was asked to bring up a plot plan depicting what the project is, so I brought this. But before I go into this one, I just wanted to share the overall project at a high level. So in phase one, the plan is to remove the weeds, piled up debris, which is leaves, sticks, fallen branches, etc., which is in the backyard, which is making it basically unusable at this moment. I don't plan to do any grading or leveling or anything, just cleaning the piled up debris. I have some pictures to show as well in the next slides. Full care will be taken that there is no impact to the wetland. We'll be going with licensed landscapers after this, after we get the permit. So currently I have the backyard, which is, and there's a wetland, but the entire area beyond the lawn is unusable at this moment. In the next slide, this I took back in the fall. You see here, there's like filled with the dried up leaves, sticks. This is the retaining wall which is behind the at the backyard, and I would want to keep this as the focal point, because in the next pictures that I took later on, I would want to show how this land became more and more unusable as we go through each season. So the plan is to kind of take out these things. As you see, there's a natural grading, that's a natural slope. I would be leaving that untouched, and there's no plan to level or make the backyard flat. Only want to take out these things and then try to make it into a usable lawn. The next picture, this I took in the spring. So again, this is the wall. As I mentioned, I would want to keep that just to see how this is changing over the course of the season. And these are all dried sticks which have got piled up. The weeds are just starting to grow into the place. And the next slide, yeah, this is, I took it last week just to hear. So there are tall weeds, completely unusable. I cannot even walk through those. And a different direction, I took a picture just as a different angle in the next slide here. So some of these weeds are actually as tall as me. And if my kids are playing in the backyard, if they're playing a frisbee or during the summer break or the ball, even if it goes somewhere here, none of us are able to even go there because we are just scared to go there. So it's our backyard, but this is my shed where I keep all my tools. That's it. I don't go anywhere beyond that shed. So the goal is, as I mentioned in the first slide, is to take out all these things and then make it into a usable lawn, a safer place for the kids to play and call in their friends during the play date to play. The next slide, please. Once I plan to take those out, what I would want to do in the next phase is basically, there are some, I want to grind the stems. Again, I'm not removing the stems because I know that will create a big hole and cavity. I just want to grind it so that it comes into the same height as the lawn, as I think it's a hazard for the kids who are running with those protruding stumps. Put 5 or 6 inches of fresh soil just so that when I put the grass seeds, they have enough runway to grow deep into it and grow like healthy and strong roots. So that's the reason I would want to put some fresh soil so that next year it doesn't become, the problem doesn't come back where it's just barren. So trying to avoid so that year after year, I get a healthier and strong lawn. So put some fresh soil on the cleaned up area, sprinkle a layer of grass seeds and water it. It's like this. Then in the phase 3, because there is, in the next picture I would be, in the next slide I can show a picture, but there is basically no barrier between the lawn and the wetland. It's like just a straight out continuation. So again, from security reasons, for the safety concerns that I have, and since it's near the wetland and I cannot put like a vinyl fence, I would want the permission to put plant arborvitaes, which I would be planting close to each other, just so that it acts as a fence between the backyard and the wetland, so that the kids are safe, and again the balls and the frisbees, they don't just roll there when they are playing there. And I was in discussion and consultation with Ms. Kasav, and I got to know that I need to, with so much of work that I'm planning to do at the backyard, I need to do something that would supplement the wetland, that would help the wetland. So depending on the calculations done in the square feet, the recommendation was that I need to plant at least 50 native species like high bush blueberries, winterberries, sweet pepper bush, that would help the wetland when I'm doing these projects. So I would be taking care of that. I mean, including that as well in this project. And the next slide, I would show the picture. So this is my shed. I already shared pictures behind the shed in the initial ones, but this is from a different angle, which is showing the lawn versus, and again, I took this in winter just so that I can show you the proposal that I have of how I'm planning to have the arborvitaes into this angle, which would be like a tree fence between the lawn and the wetland that I have. Again, this was in winter, and the next slide, I took it last week. So just to correlate the angle of the arborvitaes that I'm planning to have it between the lawn and the wetland. And once this is done, next slide please. Yeah, this is on to the right of my property. I already have some arborvitaes which separates my backyard with my neighbors. The hope is that once the project is complete and I'm able to get the usable, have this as a usable lawn, I'm just worried that maybe dried leaves, etc. from my neighbor's lawn might start growing into mine. So I was just hoping that I have, with the arborvitaes that are already there, I just extend it up until that wall to act as a mini barrier from those leaves, etc. coming into, growing into my lawn. So maybe plant 15 or 20 arborvitaes to extend the existing arborvitaes along the property line. And yeah, that was the last slide. And this is the plot plan. This is the house, and this is the current usable part which I highlighted in green. This is the wetland, and I'm requesting the permission to plant the arborvitaes along this line. The red dot doesn't signify the each tree, each arborvitae tree. It's just I used as a indicator to separate out the wetland and the lawn, and I'm requesting that this distance is about like 45 feet, 42 feet, 40, 37, 40. So maybe I can, if it's okay, I can give like a 5 feet buffer between the wetland and the yard at the, so 5 feet towards my lawn, if I can start, if I'm allowed to put the arborvitaes. And along this line, I would also be planting the supplemental shrubs where that would help the wetland. Yeah, that's the picture. So that's the proposal or the request that I wanted to put in front of the commission.
Okay, Bob?
The only question I had, when you're doing this work, will you be bringing heavy machinery in there around that wetland, and what do you plan on protecting the wetland with?
I would be consulting the landscaping company who has worked on wetlands and whatever are the prerequisites that I need to follow to make sure that the wetland is not impacted. I would be following those processes. I don't know the technical details, but one of the persons with I spoke, he said I need to put some like a barrier that they put here when they work on any project, so that nothing from the work area flows into it. But I can provide when we will be doing the project, make sure that there is absolutely no impact. And I was also asking Ms. Kasso, like at every stage of the project, can I reach out to Ms. Kasso so that she can come over and take a look at the project and stop me immediately if there is some corrective action, because my concern is if I complete the entire project and then got to know that in the very first phase there is some lapse and I need to correct it. So to avoid that at every stage, once I'm in the process or once I complete that phase, before I start the next phase, I would be requesting the commission or Ms. Kassov to come over to review and make sure that I am following all the guidelines that has been put forward by the committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, in full transparency, I would be working.
Diane?
So arborvitaes are great because they grow pretty quickly and they can make a pretty thick hedge. And barring an ice storm or really heavy snow, they don't need a lot of maintenance as long as they make it through their first year
Okay.
or two.
Sure.
They're also not native plants, so they do provide, places where birds can hide, and things like that. But they provide no food at all. Would there be like an evergreen that you could use that would be better than the arborvitae for that location right there?
Okay.
Cedar? Would that?
Eastern red cedar or Virginia cedar, I think, is an option.
Yeah.
May we talk amongst?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you. This is not something that the commission usually does.
But we'll also be.
Well, I was also thinking arborvitae deer love to eat them. I don't know what the deer population is like down around Powell Drive.
Okay.
But they also would visually restrict your backyard view. You wouldn't be able to see out over to the wetlands anymore, so it would make your backyard seem very small. So I was wondering if there were a low-growing juniper, or if you would look into high bush blueberries, or something like buttonbush, which is also a wetland-loving plant. Very pretty flowers, native. And they grow big, but they lose their leaves in the winter, so you would be able to have that visual line out to the rest of your backyard.
Okay. Actually, ma'am, if you see here in the previous slide.
Yes, sorry, one sec.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is how it looks in the fall. I know that from like having the lawn extension, I'm okay if I'm not seeing the backyard if it's high, because mine is like a slope, so only if when I come to the lower part, I might not be able to see the backyard, but other than that, from the deck, from the house, I will be able to see the wetland as well. The major reason why I wanted the thing is because in one of the earlier meetings I had mentioned that I have a daughter, and this entire project, I have been living in this house from 2016, never came to my mind to do anything in the backyard. But in one incident where the ball rolled and my 6-year-old daughter was going into the wetland to fetch it, and that's when I had to stop it. But that fear stayed with me that I have to do something. And then since I was told that I cannot go with a vinyl fence because I need to give like a 30 feet or 15 feet buffer, and my lawn itself being just 45 and 42 feet, I would lose a good part. So I thought I will put a fence, but not a vinyl one, but a plant-based fence, which would help, and I'm not polluting the thing. And that's how and since I have arborvitaes on the right of my lawn with my that I share with my neighbor, I just thought they all will look in perfect symmetry if I'm just putting everything in that, and they grow fast is what I told, like every year I can expect like about a feet that it will grow. So soon I'm hoping like in a few years I should be able to get to a height, plus I will be putting them closer to each other so that nothing can pass through them when I say that. But from animals, I think they should be able, because from this place I can keep the distance in such that even if some animal or something wants to pass, it wouldn't be an obstruction for them. I can take that into when I'm discussing with the landscaper, if that's okay.
All set?
I actually have a few more questions.
Oh, go right
That's
ahead.
okay. So you've been there since 2016. I'm curious about the retaining wall, and I apologize, I wasn't here last time. That's quite a high pile of leaves in front of it. Are the leaves really that high, or does the ground rise up?
The ground is rising up.
It does,
Yeah.
okay.
And that rising, I would be as is, no plans to take it. The only thing I would be taking is these, but yeah, there is a, I understand, I think the wall was built keeping that that slope into consideration. I think the slope was
It was
always
integrated
there,
into the
and then,
slope.
yeah, the wall was there. So I was also told by one landscaper that I could not do the cleaning too much closer, because then I could kind of risk the wall strength. So whatever cleaning I'm planning to do is not going to be up until that. I would be giving like a buffer prior to that, just so that I don't put any of these at risk.
Okay. The paragraph, the summary says that you are looking to remove trees. Are you looking to cut trees in here
Yeah,
as well?
that's one problem that I
So-
had, was that I actually
He
took
cut
the.
all the trees.
Yeah.
Oh, the
That-
trees
This is a
cut.
restoration.
Yeah.
This originally started
I
as an
see.
enforcement
Yeah.
to
Okay.
rectify.
And then I
the
realized,
cutting.
and when I was discussing about the fence, that's when I got to know that because of the wetland, for everything, even if it's in my yard, I have to follow the
I get
process. So
it.
this is like,
Okay.
my apologies for that.
So,
And-
so just to kind of get back on track, this is an this came from an enforcement order. He cut all the trees in his backyard. So we had asked him to come back with a planting plan to restore all of this area behind the shed and whatnot. So that needs to be restored and no grass planted there. Can't plant, I mean, you have to restore it and leave it alone. I mean, you're working within the 15-foot no build and a no disturb, and a 30-foot no build. That's what our bylaw says, and we need to give you would have to ask for a waiver to do any work in the back of that yard. Is that correct, Aaliyah?
Yes. Yeah, I think.
So
it's-
we're looking for a restoration plan to put that back to the way it was originally and not plant grass there.
Okay,
And that's what we had asked for.
okay. So I need to let those weeds and that's growing,
Yes?
okay.
So,
So when was the shed placed? Was the shed,
It's been always there.
It
right
was
from-
there.
Right from I moved, yeah,
so the shed was already there?
already there. But in this plan, I was planning to move it away because I think I cannot have a structure within the 15 feet.
Basically, anything within those wetland flags over to your property line and back towards your house, you're really not supposed to disturb. But where you have an existing lawn, you know, and that you've taken care of, which is fine. But where you cut all those trees down, all those round circles, all that area needs to be planted with some type of vegetation like you had presented and left to go natural. You
But
can't-
not grass.
But not grass, you
Right.
can't bring loam in, you can't bring any other material in there, other than planting some native species of plantings that will take over and replenish all the trees that you had cut down.
Okay.
so may I ask, before the trees were cut down, did all those weeds grow there?
Yes, it was always in this way. It was.
So
never
they had the
accessible.
light to grow in the same way that they're growing now?
Okay.
Or are they growing more now that the trees are gone?
Yeah, they're growing more because
Yeah.
now there is more of water that's coming from the rain and more of the sun that's coming in.
Right. So they were actually being held more in control by having trees there than when there were trees there. Typically, weeds don't grow like that if they are under the cover of trees.
Mhm.
So and that's just what I'm asking. Did they really used to grow like that before the trees were cut?
It used to be pretty much, maybe not that height, but it used to be tall, where I could not even see this white wall, to be honest. And this view that I'm seeing of this white wall is now, because there is no obstruction, but it was completely like a forest behind.
Yeah, it's like a forest.
Yeah. And
So that's what we're saying, you need to revegetate that. You cut down approximately 20 trees, just by counting your dots on your plan. So that area where you cut all the trees needs to be brought back to a natural state and left.
okay. Can I clean the dry leaves, the debris, the sticks that
You're
are
not
piled up?
You're not supposed to do anything in that area, that's a protected area.
Okay.
And by cutting the trees, and what Diane was alluding to, by cutting the trees, the canopy has been lost, and now it's allowing all the vegetation to grow with the increased sunlight, and it's allowing them to take over.
Okay.
May I suggest the addition of some native ferns, which
Absolutely.
would provide greenery, and things that would be associated with wetlands? I don't know if they're on our list. Okay, thank you. But I'm thinking things like cinnamon fern or interrupted fern, sensitive fern, would provide some of that instant greenery, provide some competition for, I'm assuming, the annual weeds that are growing.
Yes, yeah,
Right
they
there?
did look, the majority of the species did look like jewelweed.
Yeah, it looks like jewel.
And then,
Well, jewelweed is growing everywhere
oh,
this
yeah,
year.
yeah, of course.
Okay.
Can you go back to the slide that showed the shed?
Mhm.
And maybe we can determine an area where he could, because it looked like the shed, there was grass all the way up to the shed.
Okay. Hey, sorry, let me find that. Oop.
They don't have any herbs in here.
Okay, here. Oh. Turn this tab instead.
So I would suggest maybe, and I don't know if the board, you can see where the lawn is up to the shed. Maybe you use draw a line from the shed across, from the wetlands flags, across to the property line on the other side, where the arborvitae's are, and leave that lawn, and everything behind the shed be revegetated and left alone.
This one?
Correct?
Yes,
Yep. From
Okay.
there back,
to the arborvitae on the right side.
yep, from there back,
Uh-huh.
have plantings and left it to come back in its natural state.
Okay, the ones, but if I need to put the new plants there, the plants that I need to be able to get rid of those weeds, right?
No.
Because I wouldn't be able to put the
You
new
can't.
plants.
You just need to plant your plants and let that revegetate, natural. Just let it come back. Leave the stumps, leave everything there.
Okay.
Think of it as a natural playground for your children.
Yeah, just that with the weeds, if I can, that's why I was hoping that I could clear that and then put the natural vegetation, not grass seeds.
The weeds will die back, and they may come back as vigorously in the next couple of years because they have a lot of light and good growing conditions right now. You're gonna have to wait it out, and let the new plants that you put in compete with the weeds until they win.
Okay. Sure, yeah. Just concerned with the safety because really it's
Well,
causing.
I mean, you caused this by cutting the trees down. You should not have cut the trees down. If you didn't cut the trees down, you wouldn't have all those weeds growing back there.
You could put some nice Joe Pye weed or something that is pretty and flowers and makes a nice little visual barrier so that it lessens your consternation that there are weeds back there.
Yeah, Joe Pye weed grows pretty tall. It's like 5 feet the very first year. And it gets even taller with time. And it really does have very nice flowers.
Which one?
Joe
Joe.
Pye,
Okay.
Pye, right?
Mhm.
Pye weed. They do call it a weed, but it's a native plant.
Okay.
And it's good for the butterflies.
Okay. And how many native plants do I need to plant?
Would an alternative to specific plantings potentially could be an upland native seed mix? Something that would include Joe Pye weed as well as some other maybe meadow species with the openness of the area.
Yeah, given the slope, that might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, it would stabilize it as well as it would be a little cuter to look at than jewelweed and those. I can't remember what those are. They're not. Might be burnweed. That's the tall thing. Let me see if I can find a closer photo.
So a native seed mix in the area behind the shed.
So,
Yeah, that might be burnweed.
So, to the plantings he had suggested, there was
Is it in phase
high bush
3?
blueberry.
Yes,
there
high bush
was-
blueberry. So
Can you-
those, when Srini and I had discussed it, we had discussed planting those along, kind of, with the proposed arborvitae line, they would go, I guess, behind the arborvitae line to provide additional
Between the arborvitae
habitat.
and the wetland flags?
Yes, to provide additional habitat and kind of be a substitution for some of those removed species, because I did want something a little shrubbier than just, than an herbaceous species to go there. So I had recommended, it's about 500 square feet of area behind those, proposed behind those arborvitaes that might be utilized. If the blueberries, the sweet pepper bush, and the winterberry get as big as they could, if they thrive, they would need about 10 feet of space per plant, so 50 individuals seem to suffice in
We
that
should see,
specific area.
probably should see a plan to plant those plantings in this area behind the shed. No, I don't think we were in favor of the arborvitaes going along that wetland line. I don't think those are going to help us in this. Do you agree with that?
I understand the need for a visual screen, and effectively a fence to keep balls out of the wetland. I don't like not in favor of a dense planting of arborvitaes. And I don't know that they're not beneficial for the wetland. They're
Right.
solely for the homeowner.
Yes,
So,
yeah, that's why the addition of the shrubby
Yeah.
undergrowth was required as a.
all right, so what is the easiest way to resolve this? Do we need to come back again and have him show us exactly what plants are going to go behind the shed? Or can we come up with because he has a list of plants.
Yes,
So if we took that list of plants, excluding the arborvitaes, and supplemented something else along with them that we suggest, and plant all those plants behind the shed area, would that could resolve and get us back to where we need to be? Because that would be our restoration of that area.
yes, yeah, those are, I think those species would be fine in slight upland conditions. The purpose of those specific species is when Ecotech flagged the area, these were some of the species, the sweet pepper bush, winterberry, and high bush blueberry were species that were encountered. So
Okay.
because that slope is so adjacent to the wetland, I figured that they would do just fine there. Sorry, let me see if I can find a photo. Nope, too far. Oop. Yeah, because it's on the slope to the wetland, so it could handle if that wetland gets flashy. in the future and does come up a little bit, they would like it there. And would be close enough that they would provide additional, habitat space for the birds that are probably already inhabiting that wetland.
Right, so if we condition that all the area behind the shed be planted with the sweet pepper, high bush blueberry, and the winterberry behind the shed, that would satisfy our restoration of that area. And
Yeah, I
not-
would say you could put a conservation seed mix, kind of, you could put pots of those 3 species of shrub, and then a conservation seed mix.
And, and, it-
Addition.
and no and we're going to eliminate the arborvitae's. Okay.
Sorry, was that a yes?
Yes,
Okay,
I was saying yes.
yeah, that's fine. I don't have
I
eyes
didn't know
inside
if
of my
there was
head.
an alternative fencing thing at all to,
I was gonna suggest if you're
Small
worried
percent.
about,
out of the wetland. 'cause
yeah,
that
you
wasn't
could put a
originally
split rail fence along, we've done that before as a physical, visual barrier to know where the wetland starts and where the yard ends.
But the idea is to
Yeah.
let the area behind the shed just to come back,
Yeah.
because that was the area that was disturbed and cut.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were going to put a split rail fence, it would have to go and stop at the
Well,
shed.
so the curve here, that was the safety concern he had about the balls going in. That's why I was saying you could actually have a physical barrier that was a split rail fence that would remind people not to go in, but it wouldn't stop a ball.
Which means the
Arborvitae's-
parent would get to go in after the
Right.
ball.
Could arborvitae's be planted? I understand we don't want arborvitae's in the restoration area behind the fence or behind the shed. That area will be kept for restoration area. Could that curve in front of the shed be planted with the arborvitae's to kind of provide, because obviously, as you can see in front of that space, it is a grassed area where there is the existing yard area. If child is continuing to play in that area, is there any opportunity to put arborvitae's there to prevent ball and small child going into the wetland?
I think I'd rather see what's going on in the wetlands than not see, but,
All right,
But I would tend to side with the homeowner in this case.
so just so we can kind of memorialize this and when we make our motion, we
Yeah.
would kind of say, you could plant a row of arborvitae's starting 5 feet off of wetland flag A2, and then continue around 5 feet off of wetland flag A3, 4, and 5, and stop.
Could it stop around
Right.
A6, or would that be too?
That's after the shed, so you would
Okay.
stop right before the door, the corner of the shed by the door.
Before A6.
Yeah, before
Yep.
A6, so you would stop.
Midpoint between A5 and A6,
There's no flag there, so that's kind of.
Okay.
level with the shed.
And then all the other plantings that he suggested would go behind the shed in the area where all the trees were cut from where the arborvitae stop all the way back to flag A9 in that whole area. So we'll
Ilea,
go in this.
were you thinking about plantings around the curved area as well, at the edge of the wetland?
So that is where I was proposing those restorative plantings. Those 50 shrubs were proposed in that.
Along the curve,
along the
okay.
curve.
she'd proposed it to be between the arborvitae and the wetland.
So it'd be
Right.
wetland.
But I think
Restorative plantings.
Kenny's talking about the area behind the shed.
Mm-hmm.
So would that just want to be planted with a upland conservation mix?
Would it survive these weeds next year? Would it matter that it was even put down?
They are perennial species, so I would recommend that they be installed before the winter. And there might be a might be necessary to install a couple applications of them, because obviously, we were actually just having this discussion, about installing a conservation seed mix in the stormwater basins. And in history, when they have done that before, they are slower to establish. They're obviously not as quick as a grass seed mix. That's valued for its speed and how quick it turns your back dirt into a lawn. So it might be necessary to do a couple applications of any conservation seed mix that's going down.
A few years running?
Yeah, to get it started. And then it would be, they have a couple different mixes. There's one that does have more, that does have like shrubs in it, like dogwoods and stuff. And then there's a couple that are just kind of meadowy species that will be, tall native grasses, wild rye and fescues and such. And then an addition of, there's a couple like pollinator species that usually frequent them, like milkweed and joe pye weed and.
You know, what I would like to say is that a lot of people want the American dream, virtually everyone wants the American dream, of a green lawn, and pride in keeping it a green lawn. But it's amazing what happens when you put in native species and all the variety and the incredible beauty of it. If you look at it just with different eyes, it's gorgeous.
Sure, sure. Yes, ma'am. I can definitely not go with the lawn, but put the native species behind the shed. But in one of the pictures,
Let me
like
see.
behind just prior to this one,
Oh, sorry, wrong direction.
yeah, before
Even more, boop.
the previous one, I think this one. So there's all of this
Leave it.
loose wood here. So even to plant the native species, the landscaper will have to make some place so that he can reach up to the soil, because this is all loose debris which is there on top of the soil. So soil may be like a good 2-3 inches below this. So he will have, in order to make a hole so that he can plant those native trees, he will have to go through these. So, but I know that the direction is not to touch any of this. So that's why I'm not sure if I can, how would I be able to plant the native species with these loose.
So we're going to plant that with a conservation seed mix in the back, and then we're going to explain to you where we want the arborvitaes, and those other plantings will be planted from wetland flag A2 all the way around the curve to basically the front of the shed. So you'll keep the arborvitaes 5 or 6 feet off of the wetlands flags, and then behind them, behind the arborvitaes, plant those high bush blueberries, the sweet pepper and the winterberry in that area. And then anything behind the shed gets seeded with a conservation mix of some sort.
Okay, sure.
Is that the intent? Is
And-
that correct?
And the wood should be
Yes.
left there.
Okay,
Everything should be left.
sure,
Let it come back natural, and then it'll just take over.
sure.
The seeds will find their way in between cracks and crevices, and even if they don't, that wood will rot away. I would say 5 to 6 years, and it will be gone, and it will create soil. The benefit of having the leaves and the wood back there is that you're providing habitat for some of the creatures that are using the wetlands, but don't need it, but also need wooded areas for part of their life cycle. So things like wood frogs and spotted salamanders that are probably breeding in the wetlands.
Okay,
So they need both kinds.
sure, definitely,
And you need some lawn. So we're making everybody happy.
sure.
Okay? So we'll close this with those conditions, and we'll vote on it tonight, and if that's acceptable to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the audience? Any other questions from the board?
No.
Okay, so we'll close this hearing. We'll vote on it later, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
So much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Guzman. Appreciate it.
Sure, have a good one.
Okay, that's where am I here? Right here. We're on Graylock now, great. Okay, public hearing regarding the request for an amended order condition filed by Rashid Sheikh, 24 Sherrill Drive, Shrewsbury, for the construction of 2 single-family houses at 2022 Graylock Ave, formerly 3739 Melvin Ave, and 42 Sadler Ave.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you? I actually think the
Your
agenda.
name, your name.
I'm sorry. My name is Irfan Nasrullah. I'm the attorney representing Rashid Sheikh of the 7 Cheryl Realty Trust. I think the agenda item is a little mislabeled. It's really what we're here for, is certificate of compliance. We're just going back to the original plan. We opened up the back wall. It was raised, so the back wall was raised up. There's piers. It was raised up to the flood elevation plane. There are piers holding up what's remaining there. There's windows there. And there is a grate along there, along the opening, just to prevent rodents from getting in with 1 inch.
What,
1 inch hole.
what was the material that the grating's made out of? As we saw on the plan, it says 1 inch, is it metal, is it, what?
Is it wood? Is it?
But,
What was that?
I said, we'll do what you want.
No, I understand, I saw the 1 inch grating, I didn't know if it was a wire
I think it's
mesh?
wire.
Wire,
Yeah.
that's, if it was wire, it would be fine,
Wire.
with 1 by 1
Hole.
squares or holes.
Yeah.
It's 1 inch wire mesh.
Come on.
Let me see if I can pull up a plan, sorry.
So it wasn't really clear.
It's hard to, just 1 inch grill is what it says. It doesn't say.
So if we conditioned it, because it is kind of an amended order, because originally we had asked that the whole back wall be open. So
removed.
this is an amended order,
Okay.
right,
Right.
Leah?
Yes.
So we're amending it, but I think we're going to get to the same outcome.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so then procedurally, we'll amend the order tonight. You can put in the condition that it's gotta be wire, the grate, and come back to the next meeting and say, okay, it's done.
We'll ask Leah the process, but I believe that would be the process. You would inspect it and then to make sure that it was in compliance, correct?
Yes, so I think the amended order would need to go out before construction
Correct.
begins to make it this way. And then, yeah, when you're, when
When
you're
we're done,
finished, we'll
as
review it again
built.
to see if a certificate of compliance can be issued
Sure.
at that point in time, yeah, so.
All right.
Can you speak to the O and M plan for the two?
It was sent in. Did you have questions about it, or?
Yeah, just explain how that works, and that runs with the properties, correct? There were 2 of them,
There are 2.
and there was,
So there's a stormwater runoff,
yep,
and then there's the long-term operation. Basically, the long-term operation is basically to make sure that it doesn't get clogged up. You want to go through it and?
no, the question was, that runs with the property, so when the homeowners get this, it's on the deed, it's part of the property
Yeah.
in
it's-
perpetuity?
It's not for sale, and he's not planning on selling them. These are just gonna be rented, but this is, it's gonna run with the land, run with the property, and whomever owns it, this would be part of the conveyance that would be in the deed, that,
Okay.
you know, you must comply with the long-term operation plan.
All right.
So I actually do have a question about the long-term operation and maintenance plan.
Uh-huh.
It's a small point, but it's at the bottom of page 2.3, responsibilities for flood openings.
Uh-huh.
So the space underneath the house is referred to as a basement 3 different times, but it's not really a basement.
Yes.
And so maybe that word could be taken out, because a basement
Flood storage area.
implies that you can put things down there,
Sure.
but nothing can be stored there.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's fine.
Just a small word.
Yep, no, that.
Yes, that was the
Last time I was here, we
the
had.
entirety of the hearings was establishing what to call that space, because it is not a basement.
It is not a basement, no, I
So,
get
yes,
it.
definitely rectifying the O and M plan to acknowledge that.
Okay, Bob, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Diane, were you finished with your questions?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay, Martha,
I'm all set.
Chris,
No more questions.
Alea?
So I would recommend a special condition that the O and M be kind of carried with the deed, and any future deed to be issued would include the O and M plan so that it's always accessible. And then, kind of in addition, yeah, with the responsibilities for flood openings, it may want to be added regularly scheduled cleanings instead of just after storms, because I'm sure the first thought of any homeowner right after a storm is going to be, let me check my flood vents, or let me check my flood storage area and make sure it's not clogged. So it might want a more regular, the rain gardens have, I think, I can't recall the maintenance schedule for the rain gardens, but they could be checked simultaneously as part of the stormwater check-in process.
Sure, sure. I think in the fall, when the leaves are blowing around. and,
Yes,
you know,
yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
No, that makes total sense.
Yeah, because yes, after the floods, you will want to make sure you're clearing that debris that's been deposited there, but you'll want to make sure that it's able to accept that floodwaters before those floods as well, so that it would need to be cleared
All right.
on a more regular schedule.
So if we were to issue the amended order, we would condition it with those conditions that we just spoke about.
Yes, a revised O and M plan should be submitted, reflecting that it's not a basement, removing that language from all of the O and M plan, and then adding more, because the rain garden has a more robust maintenance plan, so it may want to mirror that.
All right, so if we were to approve this amendment, you would have to just get us those changes on those O and M plans prior to the issuance of the certificate.
The amended document,
The
yeah.
amended
It can be
document.
done tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right,
I
that's
don't-
just words, right?
Yeah, it's just, you know, find,
Command,
replace.
yeah.
Right, I mean,
So so some of the conditions that we just talked about, the 1-inch wire mesh, the change from basement to flood storage area, and scheduled maintenance would be
The debris.
for the debris. Would
Let
be.
me see what the
would you-
rain gardens is currently.
Would you want it in the spring and in the fall, or would you want it 4 times a year, or how many times a year?
It's a semi-annually on this,
All right,
or
twice.
as needed.
All right, that's fair enough.
you want semi-annually? I don't
No, I'm looking at I'm just reading the range.
Oh, okay, I don't think that's frequent enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, it should probably be monthly.
Well, you could do it
Quarterly?
quarterly.
yeah, every couple of months, so, yeah, it should be inspected every quarterly.
All right. All right,
And then the rate should be wire. Any particular gauge, I mean, like fence, chain link fence wire is kind of what I'm thinking.
or, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right.
Oh, yeah, something like a chain link would be.
Yeah,
I could give them the gauge if I want, but
yeah, if you you can give us the gauge, and as long as you can put that in, so we can have it with part of the order. That's, it's like a chain link fence, yeah, that would work, galvanized chain link fence.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna be solid enough to
Yep,
stop
that
anything
would
from
be
getting
fine.
in, but
And
it's,
it won't deteriorate
Yeah.
or rust. All right,
Yeah, you might want to add as part of routine maintenance as well, that if it has rusted, or if there is decay to the material, it should be replaced. Because you don't want it to slowly just erode away over time and.
got it?
any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Okay, so we'll close this hearing, and we'll condition it with what we've just discussed, and we'll vote on it tonight,
Okay,
okay?
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was chain link fence a separate condition?
Chain link is the screen we're referring to.
That's gonna be the
physical
screening of the
barrier.
basement.
Okay.
Not basement.
In the wetland.
Flood storage
Flood storage area, correct.
Below ground flood storage area.
Flood storage area.
Okay. Okay,
All right, give me one sec. I might be able to give you the gauge of the wire.
I think it's 9 gauge.
Nine gauge? So that when you vote on it, you could say it has to be a 9 gauge fence?
Yeah, I mean,
Not 9 gauge, great.
yeah, 9 gauge is the wire thickness.
The wire thing, right, right. Okay. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
Mr. Chairman, the owner on number 5 Water Street has arrived. It was the first item on the agenda. Just wanted to let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We can, would you like, we can skip back up to the RDA.
Sure.
So we have a public hearing regarding the request for determination of applicability filed by George Alcup, 5 Water Street, Shrewsbury, for the construction of a fence at 5 Water Street.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Paul Novak. I'm an attorney with offices at 392 West Boylston Street in Worcester. I'm here with Alana Stalcott with respect to this request for a determination.
Okay,
I know there was a prior meeting and there were some concerns that the board had. It's my understanding that they have provided you with the necessary plot plan, a certified plot plan, which shows the exact location of the proposed fence, the 5-foot aluminum fence. And their main concern is, and I'm not sure if you have the photographs of record, but they have 2 young children here, and their concern is a public safety concern of water safety. I believe one of them doesn't swim, and they also have friends over, and they need to somehow barricade that backyard. I know there's some other issues also with neighbors. There's also been some illegal removal of surveyor stakes with one of the neighbors, that they've taken out the stakes multiple times. They've had to have surveyors come back. So generally, a fence makes good neighbors. It's not a privacy, a whole vinyl fence or anything. It's gonna be very nicely tailored. It's gonna be like an aluminum fence with 5 foot high, so it's not too high. You can see right over it. There's plenty of air view for anyone walking by. And they do have the survey marks in. I think the surveyor placed the marks that are in there. And it should also be pointed out that the area in question, I know the board had some concerns about, was the actual frontage along the lake. And the certified engineering plan shows that there's only approximately 24 feet, so it's less than your table. It's a very small portion that would be fenced in along that area, and they don't have any plans whatsoever to regrade anything. Everything's gonna be kept the same with the lawn. There's no excavation plans or anything. They would just be having the fence, a professional fence company, install that fence according to the surveyor's points, pins that have been set. And I believe they did apply for, and they do have a building permit from the building department in Shrewsbury. And there were some concerns as far as what type of fence. There is a privacy fence up further along the property, but in this particular area, it's an open-air aluminum spindle fence.
okay.
The board has any
I
questions?
think last meeting, we asked that it be pulled back. In this Conservation Commission, we're concerned with wildlife and the ability for wildlife to pass and get up on the walls and do their thing. So we had asked that it be pulled back 5 feet from the face of the wall, thus allowing passage of wildlife. And that is consistent with what is happening on other properties along the lake, and we have asked that condition before. So that, I mean, we have no problem with you installing a fence, but I believe that would be a condition we would ask for.
The only concern with that is that part of the reason for putting this fence up is that a number of abutters, neighbors there, are walking their pets in this particular area and
But
littering it.
that's not our, we're not concerned with that. That's a trespass issue. That's a totally separate issue. They can put signs up, no trespassing signs, and if somebody trespasses, that's a police matter. Here, we're concerned about is wetlands, habitat protection, allowing for egress of ducks, geese, turtles, anything that could get up, kind of get to the other properties, not for people, people, that's not what we're regulating. We're regulating wetlands and habitat.
Right, and I think with respect to the habitat, that the way the design is, I've been informed that there's at least a 7-foot clearance between where they're proposing to put the fence on that bulkhead at their pin. There's 7 feet of distance between that and the water line.
Yes, but they're putting the fence
On
on
the bulk-
top of the wall, at the very edge of the wall. We want it pulled back from the face of the wall, 5 feet back, that's all. 5 feet from the face.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
If I could, this is not a natural wetland area. The home that we live in is the original home. It's over 100 years old. It's about 115 years old. The bulkhead there is a concrete bulkhead that stands that far above the water and then slopes down into the water. And the lawn there was, I assume, has been there for many decades. The wildlife that is in that area, we have rabbits in our yard. We have a possum, I think we mentioned that last time. I have not seen turtles there because there's quite an extent of this concrete bulkhead that runs not just on our property, but for 2 properties on either side. We do get ducks and geese, and the type of fence that we have, certainly those waterfowl could come over the fence, as they have done. The neighbors, I'm not sure if this shows it, but the neighbors in the past have put up temporary fencing to keep the geese out of their yards. This would not be a whole lot higher than theirs, because they put 3-foot fencing to keep the geese out of their yards.
But it's
just
not
for-
up, it's not on the wall, it's back.
No, it's right at the edge. They put it at the edge of the wall. They put it
Go ahead, Chris.
as far forward as they're able to stick it into the ground.
And we also have a photograph here that I believe you have that shows that there's a neighboring property, and they've built right up to the water line, along with their decking area and their docks that they've tied in, the neighboring abutting property.
There's not a fence there.
But that effectively acts as a fence. You can't get onto that deck. It's blocked out down below. It's blocked. It's a complete block there as far as what it appears to be. And like I say, this, I don't think, the fact that it's an open air fence, you're not gonna be disrupting any wildlife or it's only 5 foot high. It's this high. It's pretty much just to keep the kids and to let the kids get down to that water edge and not be kept back an additional 5 feet.
So, if I may, it's not just about creatures leaving the water and coming up into the land, it's also creatures crossing from left to right across the land, including obviously some of your neighbors. But we want the unrestricted access for animals to get from one side of your yard to the other. And if they have to jump down 5 feet down the bulkhead, that's gonna be really difficult for a lot of them, right? So,
I have not seen any animals of that variety in this area. We've lived in the house for 2 years. I haven't seen anything bigger than the possum, because I think this area has been built up for quite a while. I know the neighbors mentioned a deer, and we've certainly lived in areas that had lots of deer previously, but I've never seen anything even close to that. The type of fence that we are proposing has a bottom rail that sits off of the ground, so that smaller animals, actually even ducks, could fit underneath that. The pickets go to the ground, and they're spaced such that the rabbits, if there were turtles, and ducks, could actually get underneath that bottom rail, so it would not obstruct them. And this is the beginning of Kings Point. So there's not a lot of land further in from that, if I'm.
right.
Bob, do you have any questions?
I have no questions whatsoever.
Diane?
Just a small question. I'm trying to understand the fence.
Mhm.
Sorry. So animals could pass under the fence, but children couldn't?
Correct.
So the children are wide enough in the shoulder so that they couldn't force themselves through? Because I could get
Correct.
myself through almost anything. And I would have the same concern. I mean, I have 2 adult kids now, but I had to keep my eye on them constantly
Mhm.
because we have a place with water, and it was terrifying. And I think most children can get through anything. I just want to say, if a duck can get there through there, a 5-year-old can get there, and then that means like a 7-year-old can. I don't understand the fence, but I just want to say.
Sure. Obviously, the children still need to be watched.
Yeah.
It doesn't preclude that. The motivation for the fence is in part, at least to, like a pool fence, frankly. Like a pool fence is not really going to keep somebody out of a pool area that's very motivated, but it does slow them down. So the fence, I believe, I know the specifications are in the
There we go.
application. I believe that they are such that it would be difficult for children, at least our children's ages and their peers. We have a 1st grader and a 3rd grader, as well as some older children, but the youngest ones are that age group. So they would have to put a lot of effort in to get through, but of course it does not mean that we would just leave them unsupervised. The other reason for the fence is that we have dogs. We honestly have not been able to use our yard at all for dogs. The neighbors allow their dogs free reign of the yard, but we have not been able to put our dogs out there because the neighbors have been fairly forward about not wanting our dogs to be part of the waterfront area. And one of our dogs at a previous residence had gotten out a lot, so the town actually had asked us to put in a fence when we moved into this house such that the dog could not escape. So part of the motivation here is that we have a fence in a location that the dogs cannot get out from, at least not easily. If it's back 5 feet, then the minute the children open the gate, the dogs can just go right through into our neighbors' yards.
The minute that you open the gate, they can run right out and jump into the water, so they're going to
Actually,
do that.
neither of our dogs are dogs that enjoy swimming, although they've only been to the water once. But because of the way the bulkhead is and the gate would only open onto our own dock, it would, again, it wouldn't keep us from needing to watch our pets, but it would keep them from moving into the neighbors' yards easily or readily. And I think that is, one neighbor actually, the neighbor to our left, specifically asked us to build a fence all the way to the water. They were not here last time. They would like the fence to be there. And
Martha,
and
do you
having
have
it sit back in that fashion would not keep the dogs from going into their yards pretty readily.
I guess the other point here is too, that they're not building the fence to the water, and I question whether we have any jurisdiction here to begin with, because they're proposing no construction in that area other than a couple poles that are going in that can be potentially driven in, so that they wouldn't, it'd
Well,
be any
yeah.
zero excavation.
The Conservation Commission, we regulate anything within 100 feet of the wetlands.
Right, but it's
So
gotta
that-
be an excavation to fall within it. There is an exemption also within the conservation laws, and if they're not excavating there, not disrupting whatsoever.
Still regulated underneath, it's still in.
I don't believe so. I don't
It is.
believe fences are regulated at all.
You can
as
put a,
long-
you can put a fence up.
Right.
And we're not saying you can't.
Yeah.
All we're asking is you keep the fence back to allow the passage of wildlife. And that's the only
But it's
condition that
back,
we have.
and it's allowing that passage as we're
It isn't.
proposing,
So now,
7 feet.
I'm not gonna debate it. That's just our position. That's my position. I don't know what, we
Right.
wanna
Well,
hear from, I wanna hear from the other members
I
of the board if
understand.
you'll let us go.
I understand,
Okay?
Mr.
Thank you. Martha, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I will reiterate that the free movement of wildlife along a wetland resource is critical, and it's something that we have to, as the Conservation Commission, it is our job and our duty to protect the wetlands, and that means not just the water, but the whole biota that's included in it. And so that's where our position is coming from. I totally understand pets getting out. I have cats that love to slip out whenever the door is open. And that's just something that may have to be incorporated into the household and how the household works.
I appreciate that, but the neighbors that were here last time that were claiming that they were so into conservation have literally been calling the police regularly, complaining about our dogs, even though their dog is on our yard
That's-
every single day. So it is actually a very
That's not our,
active
that's
concern
not,
for our
that's
family.
another issue. We're here for conservation. I understand this, that's not our issue. We just want to stick to what pertains to conservation.
Mr. Chairman,
Chris,
I have nothing more than what I said earlier.
Alea?
So the bulkhead is rather wide. Do you know the distance of the bulkhead?
it's approximately 7 feet from the bulkhead to the water. It's approximately 7 feet.
Okay.
And if they put it in where it is, where the pin is right now, there's still area. You're not gonna have a human being walking by there, but wildlife,
The duck can
ducks,
get by.
birds can definitely get by that. It's 25 feet. It's kind of ludicrous that we're having this major discussion. It's 25 feet of land, and I understand from looking at other photos, people have just gone and put up fences, hundreds if not along that, right down to their areas here, and it's kind of a precedent-setting issue that it has been done in the past on numerous other residences, and, you know, they almost feel like they're being singled out here for different treatment with respect to certain neighbors here. And I think, quite frankly, that I understand the board's concerns 100%, and I think we're covering them from a legal stance and from precedent-setting cases, that as long as the wildlife can get through there, whether it's a duck, it's a deer, it's a rabbit, it's a raccoon, it's a coyote, you can have any, foxes, if they can get through there, they can get through there. A human being is probably not gonna be comfortable walking along that area, but we're not here to protect humans, we're here to protect potential wildlife that's going through there. And I think what we're proposing here is more than reasonable with that open air fence. It's not a privacy fence, it's basically for the protection of their children and to keep neighbors out from littering and having their pets enter upon here. Because the question becomes, if we leave this 5-foot barrier, is the town gonna come in now that we're implementing this to clean the dog waste and the litter that's left by the public in general as they traverse this particular area?
They shouldn't be traversing your property. That's private
But they
property.
are. They're
I'm
doing-
happy to
That's
share
a
with you
sep-
many,
that's a
many
separate
pictures
issue,
of
is
them
what I'm
going
saying.
across our
That's for-
property,
that's for
including a
some
party
other
on our
enforcement.
lawn 2 days after
We're
this
just
here
talking
last month.
about wetlands protection.
But that's why we're here. We're here for the fence, and that's
Correct.
exactly what you said,
You know,
Mr. Chairman.
I
that
think
we
we're going
wanna
back
keep
and forth
this
too
out.
many times. I'm not gonna debate it.
Yep.
Any questions from the audience?
Sorry, I did have an additional.
Go ahead.
So the bottom of the fence is just not shown on this plan. I was wondering how far back the fence is proposed from, within the bulkhead. Is it right up to because you said it's a 7-foot wide bulkhead. So where within that is it proposed?
The bulkhead, if you can imagine, is shaped a bit like a triangle with a flat top.
Mm-hmm.
And the proposal is to put the fence at the front edge of that so that there's not a hazard of that front lip. But the slope of the bulkhead continues down and covers about 4 feet. The slope is such that it goes from the front edge to the front edge of the where it meets the water, which actually the slope stops at that point.
Okay.
And across from the water's edge, as it sits now, not in the wintertime, obviously, from the water's edge to the back of the bulkhead is between 6 and 7 feet.
Okay.
It's a very thick
I
bulkhead,
was,
concrete.
is there a potential for proposal of the fence being centered within the flat spot of the bulkhead so that there is 3-ish, maybe, feet of bulkhead available for critters to exit the water, make their way to whatever lawn space they would like, and then you would have the entirety of the lawn and about half of the bulkhead within the fenced area?
With all due respect. Animals, the only animal I have seen come up the bulkhead are the ducks, and they could either fly in and fly out, or they could actually come up and go underneath the fence. Sadly, this is not a natural habitat. Would actually prefer a natural habitat, to be honest. We were looking at other houses on the lake that were down closer to the wetlands area and actually quite loved being in the natural area down where the eagle was nesting. This was the house that was available that fit our family. So our second oldest, his Eagle Scout project was actually water conservation on the lake, pulling out the invasive species. As a family, we're very environmentally oriented. Both of our older two children are Eagle Scouts and did things with conservation in their Eagle Scout projects. This is not truly, this is not a conservation issue. The neighbors were using our yard all the time, and they wanted to keep using our yard, and they raised this issue as a way to prevent us.
The neighbors aren't here.
Putting up-
We heard from the neighbors last month. We
You heard
understand-
many things from the neighbors, and it was really
We
distressing.
heard from them last month, but they're not here tonight. The only thing that we're discussing is where the placement of the fence is.
Yes, sir.
We
And-
suggested, can I talk? We suggested we keep it back 5 feet from the face of the wall. That's up for discussion. There's members of the board. That's just what we put up for discussion. I don't know what the board is going to vote, or how we're going to issue this RDA. So we'll have a discussion. If you have anything to add pertaining to the fence and wetlands related, we'll be more than happy to hear from you.
My only inquiry would be, and I know I'm late in the game here, but has the board actually gone out and taken a view of the actual pins that are in on the two sides on this particular section?
I live on the lake. I drove right up to the wall, and I looked at all the flagging and where, by what you, how she's explained, where she wants the fence, she wants it on the edge of the wall in the bulkhead. That's where it came last month. We asked if we could pull it back 5 feet, and then they are not amenable to that. So I know exactly where the fence is shown on your property. I see the white fence. I see the flags coming all the way down to the water. I know exactly where it
Is
is.
there some middle ground as far as the 5 foot we're dealing with? Is there maybe to go back and just leave the bulkhead where that wall is there open so
It's up for
that?
discussion again with the board. We haven't discussed it at all.
Okay, that's what I would propose here, is a middle ground of saying, look, is there something that we can both agree to as a compromise here, so that they can basically monitor and maintain their yard and cut their lawn without having to jump on the other side of that fence and go out there with a weed whacker or whatever on a regular basis there?
We can discuss it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, board members.
Okay. All right, so this is open to discussion. Does anybody have any discussion on this RDA at 5 Water Street with regards to the fence placement? Would anybody like to make a motion with regards to this fence?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we issue a negative determination of applicability for the construction of an aluminum fence at 5 Water Street.
Any conditions with the placement of the fence?
I suggest a condition that the fence be placed 5 feet back from where it is proposed on the original plans, from the water.
Any discussion? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we approve, we issued a negative determination with the condition that the fence be set back 5 feet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. We have a public hearing regarding notice of intent filed by Erin Worski, New England Power Company, 170 Data Drive, Waltham, to perform access road improvements and create permanent work pads and existing right-of-way that serves several electric overhead transmission and sub-transmission lines at several locations along the existing overhead transmission infrastructure, crossing several public ways. Good evening.
Good evening. We were here last month. We did not have a DEP number. We do now. There were
Sorry,
some.
could you just add your name? For
Oh,
the-
I'm sorry. Jen Bonta, TRC representing National Grid tonight. There were some questions last month regarding what is in our seed mix, and I have brought our seed mix options, as well as there were some questions about the foundations of some of our structures, and I've brought a design of that as well. In addition to questions about climate resiliency and how many structures and what is taking place within the buffer zones. And I have brought supplemental information on our impacts with the buffer zones for work pads and structures, and as well as filed the waiver for work within the 15 and 30-foot buffer zones for the town.
Are these permanent or temporary? I think there was a question on how much was permanent and how much was temporary. Did you have that?
So the structures are permanent and they're already existing. Here's the seed mix and the structure. The work pads are temporary in certain locations, such as bordering land subject to flooding in riverfront area, and inland bank and BVW, but they're proposed to be permanent in upland areas. And the access roads are already there, and they're expected to be slightly widened in certain areas where they're kind of narrow, with crushed stone, so an impervious or pervious substrate.
Okay. Bob,
I have no questions.
Diane?
So where you are, you have a waiver to request work within the 15, 30-foot buffers. Will there be any risk of hazardous chemicals that would contaminate the water with the work?
I would not think so, due to its crushed stone for the work pads and the roads, and the structures themselves are steel. We'd be removing wood poles, which I believe you mentioned last month that they were treated probably when they were put in a very long time ago, and we believe that due to the time frame, anything that was on them is already in the soil. Yes. And the replacement with steel would be a better option.
Okay, and no other risk of contamination?
No, and we have BMPs to make sure that all the work equipment stays upland unless they're working, but after hours it's all upland. We'll have a monitor out every week ensuring that all of the wattles and all of the silt barriers are in place to ensure that everything is clean, and we will make reports every week and address everything and have people go out and change silt fences where they're degrading and make sure that everything stays out of the wetlands.
Okay, thank you.
Martha?
How long do you expect this work to be happening?
This is proposed in 2 phases, so I believe one of the lines is proposing to start work this fall in certain areas, but the next phase isn't until fall of 2025. So we would be requesting that the order of conditions is for 5 years, good for 5 years, just due to the length of the line, the amount of work, and where they might need to be at certain times for restrictions with turtles and things like that, just to leave it open, especially when we want everything to revegetate as well, within a proper time frame.
And the work pads in the wetland areas are, what are they constructed of?
It'll be construction matting, timber matting.
So the big
in the
timber.
Yes, in the wetlands, it'll just be timber matting, temporary, and they'll be removed and reseeded with the wetland vegetation mix.
And in the upland areas?
In the upland areas, they're proposed to be crushed stone. so that in the future, for emergencies and things like that, there are stable work environments for when storms happen and they need to get out and work on the lines, that there's a place for them to be in as many structures as possible. Obviously, in more sensitive areas, that's not something we're proposing or we think should be proposed, so we want more temporary, but still stable. There is some grading proposed at around some of the work pad areas, so that at least there's a stable surface to come back to. And even in certain areas, we've proposed putting some stone down originally, but then putting soil and reseeding it afterwards.
Okay. I guess that was my question. I was trying to envision how big an area of crushed stone there would be around, existing structures that were in upland areas that would take away the vegetation, the existing vegetation.
Yeah, a traditional work pad, depending on the line and the size, is either 50 by 50 or 100 by 100. They can be reduced as well after the project. Especially when you're removing a pole and putting a new pole down, the work pads are 100 by 100. But for work that just involves line work, they do not make them that big. And if needed, they can be reduced in size from that.
Okay. I know that's non-jurisdictional for us, but I'm glad to hear that they can be reduced in size. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Chris?
No questions.
Leah?
I don't believe any questions now.
Anybody in the audience? Okay, there being none, I guess we can close this hearing. We'll close it. Okay, you're all set. Okay, we have a public hearing regarding the notice of intent filed by Jonathan Scott on behalf of Prologis, 3350 Peachtree Road, Suite 850, Atlanta, Georgia, for the construction of a warehouse building, associated parking, paved areas, retaining walls, landscaping, and stormwater infrastructure at 74 Centec Boulevard, 12 Centennial Drive, 414, 428 Cherry Street, and 46R Clues Street.
Good evening. My name's John Perry, engineer from Langen. We're representing the applicant, and here with me tonight is Jonathan Scott from Prologis. I've got Hannah Scher from my office, and on the computer remotely is Greg Hotchmuth from Epsilon, who was our wetland scientist. And we have some updates since we met last month. And Ali, I think Hannah had sent some slides to you earlier
yes,
today.
I apologize.
If you're able to pull those up, that'd be great.
Where's this project?
I'll stand up because take advantage of being in person. We're glad to be here with you in person. I think the last few lined up exactly with Grafton Conservation, so this is nice to see you all. So thanks. So as I mentioned before, we do have some updates to the plans. We had sent in some information to Aaliyah earlier today, which we'll be sending hard copies on. And I just want to give a quick overview of that and a few other items as well. So a few bullets here. What I'm going to present on is we've developed a sequencing plan to accompany our erosion control plan. We've modified, we had a wetland replication area that was just in Grafton. There's a small isolated wetland in Grafton that we are, it's a bylaw wetland, not state jurisdictional, that we're filling, and we were replacing that and replicating that in an area that was in Grafton. So I don't think we got into it a whole lot last time, but we've moved that, and it now straddles the town line, so I'll be presenting on that. There is an isolated wetland area that is exclusively in Shrewsbury. the M series, and a comment from DEP was for us to look at that through the lens of is it an isolated land subject to flooding? So we've addressed that. We have an update on some low impact development measures, and then we've done some additional soil testing. So I'll discuss all those items tonight. So next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So this is our sequencing plan, and we've developed this in conjunction with the contractor, and it will be part of our final plan set. So we wanted to present that to you. I know it may be a little hard to see here, but hopefully our numbered circles are large enough. And the main goal of the sequencing plan was to show how the contractor is going to essentially build the site, specifically focused on erosion control and trying to sequence the work so that we can leave certain areas stabilized for as long as feasible while other areas are being worked, so we don't have just a large site fully exposed at any one given time. So I'll go through this briefly here. So and as you can see, we do have the numbers on here that correlate to notes that will show up on the plan that will be a little more clear. But first thing that the contractor will need to do, obviously, is cut in a construction access road. Here shown number 1. So they'll be just cutting in a small access point, constructing that out of gravel, stabilized material with a stone tracking pad, just so they can get their equipment in there and start to stage. Second thing will be to install the perimeter controls around the entire downstream perimeter, which would be a wire-backed silt fence with some filter tube socks as well. And we're fairly confident that we can use the existing trail network that is throughout the site in order to do that. So we'll have limited tree clearing needed to install our perimeter controls, which is great. Number 3 would be to start clearing some trees in the southern area in order to start building our temporary stormwater basins. Number 4 would be ground improvements for our retaining wall. So in the southern area, plan south is to the left, if you recall. We've kind of twisted our view here. So plan left is south. Start to build, there's a fairly large retaining wall here. Start to build the retaining wall and the basins as well, temporary sedimentation basins. Number 5 will be starting some of the tree clearing in the large cut area. So the pink shading represents where we have cut earthwork, and then the green is where we are filling. So we'll start to clear some of those trees to start our excavation so that we can have material to push to the south to start filling that area. So after that, number 6 will be to continue our retaining wall construction, filling in the reinforced area and starting to bring that up to grade. 7 will then be to start filling in some of the deep fill areas. So we'll try to leave this area designated as number 7.
Sorry, my computer died. Let me see if Mark has a charger.
No problem. I think Hannah's logged in here, so she can probably share screens. So we can keep going. Perfect.
Okay.
All right, we're in
I will run
business.
upstairs and grab my charger while you continue sharing the screen.
Just get back to where we were. All right, great.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
So as you're sequencing this and you're building up your fills, are you also stabilizing the fills and slopes as you're going?
Yes, they'll be stabilized as we're going up. Any slopes that are exposed will receive like a jute netting and hydroseed as they're built. We don't have any slopes that are greater than a 3-to-1 on site. So that's good. That's fairly easy to stabilize. The large fill area in the south here will be bounded by this retaining wall. So there will be, there won't be a slope there, right? It'll just be the retaining wall coming up. And that reinforced backfill will be a fairly granular material with low silt content. So there should be low potential for silty runoff in that area.
And a lot of those areas with the deep fills, that's in Grafton.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, the majority of the site in Shrewsbury is in the cut area, so that'll be, we'll be stabilizing that as we go as well. And there is some rock, a decent amount of rock in that cut area. So obviously erosion potential where there's rock is fairly low as well. And then once we've got the site up to, grade, we'll start working in the employee parking lot number 8, and then same thing in the more northern truck staging area. So main point of this slide is really to show that we have a plan how we're going to attack the site and not just clear cut everything and then start building, right? Everything's kind of in sequence. So on the next slide, it's just a profile of the site to show, again, the red is the cut excavation area where the green is the deep fill. How we need to clear trees strategically, cut to fill strategically, so that we can kind of push the material plan right to left, essentially. Okay, next slide. And that'll all be done in conjunction with our sedimentation and erosion control plans, which were submitted in the original package as well. Just shown here again for a bit of a reminder. We'll have intermittent rows of silt socks and filter tubes. There'll be temporary seeding and using straw cover, things like that along the way. All subject to our SWIP plan that will be developed and implemented. Okay. Okay, so this is the sheet that shows the revised isolated wetland replication that I mentioned earlier. And as you can see on the left of the screen here is that small isolated wetland that we are filling. And originally on the plans, we were going to replicate that in one of our stormwater basins. The main point being that it is a small bylaw ILSF in Grafton. We were replicating the volume after some discussion with the Grafton Conservation Commission. We thought it'd be better not to propose that in one of the stormwater basins. And the location that we settled on as being the ideal spot for it is shown there, plan right, where we show proposed replication area. And as you can hopefully see there, it does straddle the town line, so a piece of that will be in Shrewsbury. And essentially we have one of our detention basins just to the right of that receives water just from roof runoff, so it's clean water running off into that basin. It's a detention basin, not an infiltration basin. It'll be controlled slow and released slowly through an outlet control structure, and the outlet will feed that isolated wetland replication area. We have some details showing how the inlet, we're not going to have a typical flared end section inlet. We'll have a large T essentially on the end of the pipe. It'll be, I think it's a 50-foot long perforated pipe. So the water will essentially just kind of leach out of that. So you won't have a point discharge. So we're not creating any erosion issues in the replication area. And there'll be an overflow on the southern side that will discharge into the bordering vegetated wetland there.
So is that replication connected to the wetland that's right next to it?
It's not going to be connected because the wetland that we're filling is isolated, and it's an isolated land subject to flooding. It's under the state regulation. It's not even close. Grafton has a more stringent calculation, so it's a bylaw ILSF. So one of the main points is to replicate the volume. But it is not connected to a BVW, and we don't want to connect it to a BVW because we want to replicate it as it currently exists, essentially.
Does that replication fall within our bylaw conditions? Do you know?
I don't know if we require replication for isolated land subject to flooding or bordering land subject to flooding.
Okay.
One question that would arise is, if it's crossing that line and it's technically a Shrewsbury isolated land subject to flooding, does it count towards Grafton? Will Grafton accept that as? Okay.
Yeah, we've presented it to Grafton Conservation already, and they're okay with it.
Okay.
Yep.
Because, that would be the big thing if you just don't reach your number. And we love a little extra isolated land subject to flooding, but if it's not,
Yep.
it's not benefiting your calculations, then it's just land.
Yep. Okay, next. Okay, so a comment we received from DEP was that we calculate, that we look at the wetland series M, that is an isolated wetland, is fairly large isolated wetland, and we run the calculations to determine if it's an isolated land subject to flooding or not, and we always assumed that it was, just because it is a fairly large isolated area. It does have about a 10-acre watershed that flows to that isolated point. So we have gone ahead and run those calculations, and lo and behold, yes, it is an isolated land subject to flooding. We have determined the actual boundary of the isolated land subject to flooding, which follows, the elevation, right, the contour, which generally falls either within or on top of the delineated wetland line, except for a couple of areas. One specifically is on the southern area. Hannah, if you want to zoom in there, kind of on the southern, along the property line, it kind of comes out of the wetland area, but it's off of our property, so we're not that concerned with that. And then there is a little bit of undulation with the contour on the left-hand side there. So that ILSF boundary does kind of come out of that wetland area. So we have actually adjusted our buffer zones on the plans to account for that, to be more, we kind of use the more conservative of the two, right? Coming off of offsetting either the wetland line or the ILSF line, whichever one is more conservative. Okay. A few things that we presented last time in concept, and we wanted to just document. One is that we will have on our on the right hand side here, that rectangle represents the truck wash, and we want to document that indeed we will have a rainwater harvesting and reuse tank associated with that. So there will be again reuse, and there's also recirculation. So any water that's not rainwater that we're getting from municipal water, that water will be reused as well, which is obviously benefits the environment. And on the left-hand side of this page here, we have added a shutoff valve on the stormwater system, because that does handle stormwater from that fueling area, and I think that was a comment or a request from this commission, so we have added that to the plans. Okay, so last time we presented to you all, we had conceptually designed some pervious asphalt areas, and we were looking at some ways to add low impact development designs to the employee parking lot specifically. And we had shown conceptual locations for the pervious asphalt. And at that point, we were considering putting the pervious asphalt in the low points of the parking lot and essentially using it as drainage, conveyance in lieu of catch basins, essentially, right? But the site is considered land use with higher potential pollutant loading under the stormwater bylaws and manual. And we do need to achieve pre-treatment before we discharge stormwater to an infiltration basin or an infiltration BMP. So we were kind of scratching our heads a little bit on, well, how are we going to do that with pervious asphalt. And we actually had a call with Graves Engineering because they would need to, review the plan that we submit, and we talked it through with them a little bit. And what we came up with was, rather than putting the pervious asphalt in the low points, let's put the pervious asphalt in the high points. That way, the rainwater essentially just, rains directly in to the pervious asphalt, and you're not getting that first flush across the standard asphalt into the pervious pavement. So the stormwater design is essentially unchanged. We have typical hooded deep sump catch basins at all the low points that will convey water into, go through our stormwater separators to achieve pretreatment, and will discharge water into our underground recharge systems shown there in the gray squares or the gray rectangles. But we're also adding pervious area to the parking lot at the high points, just because we wanted to add some pervious area. And so we're adding about 27,000 square feet of pervious area, with the areas just in the parking lot. And then to the right, that curved shape there, shown in that same blue shading, that's our emergency access point from the parking lot into the warehouse site for fire trucks, emergency apparatus, and that will also be pervious asphalt. That was something that was, we originally had those as grass pavers. The fire department really wanted more of a paved surface, so I think we have the best of both worlds here. It's a paved pervious surface, essentially. And then in that small green oval area, we're pointing to a new rain garden that we are also going to be implementing as well. And I say it's small, but it's actually about 2,000 square feet. So it's 20 by 100, give or take, in area. It looks small in this plan, but it's a pretty good sized rain garden. Something else we discussed as a group last time we met was if any critters find their way from the wetland areas into the parking lot, how are they going to get out? And we're showing in the more royal blue areas where we have flush curbing, and we have flush curbing along the entire length of the accessible parking along the northern piece of the employee parking lot. We have flush curbing at the emergency access gate as well, and then we've added some additional flush curbing within the parking lot, not just at the accessible area, but also kind of within the parking area as well, in case they somehow find their way into the parking area, not just into the driveway, not just into the accessible parking area. And then lastly, another comment DEP had for us with their comments from early July, I believe it was to perform some more investigation, soil investigation on site, just to get a little bit better coverage with some of our infiltration BMPs. And Graves Engineering had also commented that we should perform another test pit specifically within our proposed rain garden in the northern portion of the site there, that is in Shrewsbury, just south of our truck parking area. So we did go back out, spent a few days in the field. We performed an additional 11 test pits to get better, soil testing coverage throughout all of our stormwater BMPs. So at this point now, we've done about 100 borings and test pits on site. We have, I think, in my opinion, really good coverage. We understand the site, the soil conditions, groundwater, elevations very well, and we have a solid plan for our stormwater system. We have just today formally responded to all of DEP's comments in writing. We forwarded that to Alita earlier today. We're also working towards, and we're just on the verge of submitting some revisions and updates to Graves Engineering as well. Essentially, they had given us, I think through the planning board, a comment letter, in my opinion, very minor items to address from a stormwater standpoint, which we have addressed, and just to update them on these items we've presented tonight that are just changes essentially. So that's what we have for you tonight. We will again be submitting all this, have submitted electronically. Everything I mentioned, will be providing hard copies this week. And I believe we'll be back before you in September, at which point I think we've addressed, I'm sure you have comments and questions for me tonight, but at this point have addressed everything we've discussed so far. So at that point in September, hopefully we can, we're hopeful that we can start to, talk about an order of conditions at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a note from me.
Leah?
Similar to the Graves peer review, they've addressed in comments, Ecotech issued their review, a lot of the comments related to the wetlands of Grafton. So most of those are being addressed by Grafton, and really the wetlands of Shrewsbury were majority that isolated vegetated wetland and ILSF area, so they have adequately met all of our boundaries for that. And then I'll be talking with the Grafton Conservation Agent on Friday to kind of discuss any comments and questions we had tonight and how we can get on top of those. And then when we are issuing those orders of conditions, we'll want them to work with each other.
Right.
So we'll be talking about what conditions will be required to kind of
Right.
the bare minimum on the Shrewsbury side. And then I think Grafton is a little more stringent than we are. So how we can stay on the same page without messing with Grafton's bylaw and wetlands.
All right. Bob, you have any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Diane?
I wanted to thank you for the, putting in the pervious pavement. I know it looks small on the map, but I'm sure that it's pretty big because this is a huge map.
It is.
And I just wanted to say that, so theoretically, with pervious pavement, you really don't have to salt very much, sometimes not at all. And maybe it could be, there could be a condition where there's no salting in that area unless it needs it. I mean, if there's like an ice storm, then that's really different. But typically, if it's plowed, it should not need to be salted. And that would prevent salt from just going down into the land.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Good idea.
Martha?
I also wanted to commend you on the introduction of pervious pavement and working through that issue of pollutant loading and changing the location of the pavement. Can you, for the sake of anybody who may be listening to this and the general edification of folks in Shrewsbury, if you are knowledgeable about the maintenance of pervious pavement, could you just say a little bit about current thinking on that?
The biggest thing is sanding. You have to worry about, right? In the winter, if you do use sand to control your ice, it does need to be cleaned more regularly and ideally with a vacuum sweeper as opposed to just a regular sweeper. So I think the way we propose it here, by keeping it at the high points, you don't get, all the sand, I shouldn't say all, the vast majority of the sand, if used, would flush into the low spots, be captured by the deep sumps in the catch basins, and those can be cleaned out easily, as opposed to if the pervious asphalt were in low points, you'd want to be careful with how much sand you use. And if you are using sand, just keep an eye on it in the spring after the winter and vacuum sweep it as needed.
Mr. Chair, for me, Jonathan Scott with Prologis, just to bring up as well, that's very consistent with UPS's, with their maintenance plan. They don't use sand, so this is gonna work out really well for them as well.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you.
All set?
Mm-hmm.
Chris?
It seems silly if I also applauded your use of pervious pavers, but I appreciate everything you've done, including the additional rain garden area and the flush curbs.
Thank you.
No other.
Lee, you all set?
Do you have any concern about, I guess, the maintenance of the pervious pavement with the kind of the mix, especially when the plowing of it occurs and whatnot, to, I guess, to differentiate for, for the long-term snow plow driver?
From a plowing standpoint or from a like sanding, salting standpoint?
I guess a little bit of both. It can be plowed just the same as regular asphalt, but I wasn't sure if there was any,
You mean like a sign that marks that it's a low salt area or something?
yeah, either it would be, because obviously they're the high spots, but they do just kind of blend, or will probably are supposed to blend seamlessly with the rest of the parking lot. So I was just wondering if there was any differential maintenance that was going to be required that will make it weird.
I don't have any concerns with that. Like you said, the surface will be seamless essentially. From a plowing standpoint, it's not like there'll be like a lip, on one that it will get chipped up or something like that. So they should be able to plow, no problem. And as someone had mentioned earlier too, if you do plow it on the pervious asphalt, if you get a little sunlight, that does start to kind of dry it out. The water starts to melt and just kind of percolate downward. We had talked about putting up some signage, where we can, to let the driver or the plow drivers know that those areas are pervious pavement. And I'm sure that the owner would be amenable to making sure their plow folks are, trained on that.
Mm-hmm. And then are those little ovals within the parking lot, those will be vegetated buffers for the parking lot as well?
Yes.
I understand the one is the rain garden, but the rest of them will just be regularly.
They'll be like
grass.
raised islands with lawn. They'll have some trees in there.
Okay.
Yep, trees and mulch.
And then, do you have any, I guess the concern, what would be the sequence of installing the pervious pavement? Because, you don't want, there can sometimes be a disconnect between the engineer and the contractor who's actually doing the work. So I just want to make sure that that does not occur, that this area is specifically for pervious pavement and it doesn't accidentally just get paved.
Well, if that happens, then we'll have to move it and,
Just
right?
keep it all up, but
So it'll be pervious asphalt, one way or the other.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to, we've had communication issues in the past where the engineer says, yeah, sure, no problem. Pervious pavement it is, let's do that. And then it doesn't happen and it's annoying to track you down after.
Yeah, I understand. No, we'll make sure it happens.
Okay, and then, sorry, going back to I know we've looked at snow storage locations in the past. And I am just concerned since the area that is adjacent to the replicated the ILSF and the isolated wetland, the M series one, are those low areas where snow tends to be deposited. Is that a proposed area for snow storage? Because we don't want that to just trickle right into the wetlands, or is it proposed just trying to get all that snow away from there and most of it?
The designated snow storage for the employee parking lot will likely be towards the, I don't know if you can, is there a sheet that zooms out, even the test pit plan is fine. Yeah, there you go. Is more towards that area.
We'll go to that kind of overflow lots sort of area?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, because, the majority of the employees are gonna wanna park closer to
Yeah,
the
exactly.
walkway to get through there, so if they need to use those spots for snow storage.
And then
it'll
is
be-
the low area on the, south, is this north, south?
Let's call that south,
Okay.
plan south, I
Is
guess.
is that where the snow will be deposited on the southeast side of that?
Yeah, there's a space between the edge of the parking lot and the small basin there.
Okay,
for some snow storage.
okay,
And, you know, if they need to truck it off-site or truck it back into the, you know, warehouse area, something like that,
okay,
they'll have to do that.
cool. Yeah, I just want to make sure it's avoiding those kinds of, those parking areas that are most adjacent to the wetland, because
Yep.
in creating that lovely little wildlife corridor, you also create no curb to stop that snow from just running right into the ILSF and the IBW.
Yep.
Okay. I think that's all my questions.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? Anybody on the board?
I just have one comment. I imagine you were severely constrained to put that replication area crossing the town borders.
It's not that we didn't want to have it crossing the town border. It actually ended up being what we thought would be the best spot for it, because with any wetland replication area, you want to make sure that it's fed hydraulically. And this just happened to be a nice place where we had some room. Obviously, we are constrained with space on site, and we don't want to encroach in any, you know, wetland buffers or, you know, any tree clearing area that we don't need to, you know, take down. It ended up being just a good spot where it's about the same size, a little larger than what we're replicating, and just an added bonus right near our detention basin that will have a fairly steady stream of, you know, even like low flow events. You know, low flow events in our infiltration areas, it's just going to go into the ground. The detention basin, you'll get some flow trickling through, and it's also, you know, roof runoff, so it doesn't, we're not concerned about, you know, suspended solids and things like that getting in there. So it kind of just worked out nicely, I think.
So that ILSF area will be a revegetated?
Yes.
You have a,
There'll be a planting plan. We do have a planting plan. I believe it was in the information that was submitted
okay.
as well.
And then does that also have a, sorry, we're not super familiar with the replication of flood storage areas. Does that have a similar monitoring period?
It will have a monitoring period,
That
for the
2
plant.
years is standard for the WPA. I wasn't sure if Grafton additionally, it had any additional monitoring time.
We will.
Because that will be, obviously that will be a special condition to
Right.
do the 75% success over 2
Okay.
years monitoring, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to make sure if Grafton was requiring that you monitor for any longer than that, we would all be on the same page for monitoring and submitting those wetland reports.
We didn't get into that much detail with them yet on it.
Okay.
We will check their bylaw on that.
Cool.
And we'll have to agree to those types of conditions that, you know, would be in their bylaw.
Awesome.
There will be, you know, we want that area to be successful as well, so,
Okay.
all right.
Okay. We all set?
I think I'm all set.
All right, well, we'll see you next month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. New and old business, discuss and signs order conditions and RDAs. All right, so we already did the two RDAs. I guess it would be
Need to sign.
20 to 22 Graylock.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I can't believe I'm saying this. But I make a motion that we issue an amended order of conditions for 20 to 22 Graylock Avenue, with the conditions that the flood openings be covered by a 1-inch 9-gauge wire mesh, that the O and M conditions strike reference to basement and replace it with flood storage area, that the O and M is carried with the deed in perpetuity, and that it include, what did we say?
Quarterly.
Quarterly maintenance for both the rain gardens and the flood storage openings?
We actually didn't, we're not requiring the rain gardens to be cleaned differently than what was set out
Oh.
in the O and M plan, I don't think. It said in the O and M plan, semi-annually.
For the
Okay.
rain
For the
gardens.
rain
So,
garden.
so amend that, strike that. The fourth order of conditions should include quarterly inspection and clearing of the flood storage areas.
I would also recommend a special condition that the commission be notified of any change in ownership of the properties, so that we can ensure that the O&M plan is relayed to
Because of the,
future
because of the
owners.
history of this project. Be a good idea, I think, so.
I think that's a good idea, I agree with that. I think with the wire mesh, I think we had said like a chain link fencing. So the wire mesh was a chain link fence, number 9 gauge.
9 gauge, but.
Okay.
So is a 9 gauge a
Do we
specific
want
type
to,
of,
we want to
more
specify
generic?
the type of metal, like galvanized steel or something that's non-corrosive? I mean, it's not gonna rust.
So galvanized probably would be a better choice.
Okay, so a galvanized wire mesh,
Correct.
Chain link fence,
okay.
okay. Anything else to be added? Do we have all that?
Super straightforward.
Do-
Do it again, 3 times fast.
I was gonna second
Let's
it.
hear it.
Are you-
Yes, I
you-
believe I have all of
You're
that.
good with it? Everybody good? So do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
And, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for the New England Power Company to perform access road improvements and create permanent work paths within an existing right-of-way serving several electric overhead transmission and sub-transmission lines within Shrewsbury.
do you have any discussion?
She mentioned 5 years.
Right, do we want to make this a 5-year?
Yes, so this, they requested that the special conditions be valid for 5 years instead of the normal 3.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that's it.
Well, we talked about 31 Powell with the, did we want to close that with conditions, or do we want to?
They did, I think,
Yes, we can
We did
close
close
that.
the
Did we
hearing.
close that?
Yeah, we closed that, so we can issue an order of conditions for that with
Okay.
the way we have now. Do you have that?
I have some notes.
Somebody?
I'll
Okay,
defer to
let's do this together.
Okay.
There you go.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for the removal of trees and restoration of plantings at 31 Powell Drive, with special conditions that a row of arborvitae be installed 5 feet off the wetland, running from wetland flag A2 to halfway between wetland flags A5 and A6, which essentially puts that at the corner of the front corner of the shed. And that a conservation seed mix be used behind the shed. How do we work the multiple installations of that conservation seed mix?
Well, that was behind the shed from flag A6 to
Back.
flag A9,
Mhm.
and then,
Yes.
because it is a kind of a replication area, or a restoration area, it could have, I don't think I would require reports for it, because I'll probably be going out there pretty regularly. But it could have like a monitoring period where it's, they couldn't close out the order of conditions for a number of years to
Do you
ensure
want to monitor
that
it for
the.
3 years?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think given
Mhm.
how long it takes those things
Mhm.
to establish. So monitoring period of 3 years, and that the proposed number of woody wetland plants be installed between the wetland and the arborvitae to consist of
Winterberry.
winterberry, sweet pepper bush, and high bush blueberry.
Right. Do we want to require any of those three to be planted in the restoration area? I'd be fine with it just being conservation seed mix, to be honest.
Me too.
Yeah, I think so, yeah,
Makes it simple.
yeah.
Yeah, I think just a meadow conservation mix would be good, because then they would have some use of the area. It would just be
Mhm.
Okay, is there, do
meadowier.
you have anything else to add? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, certificates of compliance?
Okay. I have two certificates of compliance that I would recommend issuing tonight. 11 Sunset Lane is continuously under, requires more work before it can be closed. This is what I'm looking for. Okay. The first that I would recommend is for 9 and 11 Fifth Avenue. This was a. That's me. There you go. You're welcome to come up and talk about your project. She'd had the request for certificate of compliance sitting around for several years after the conclusion of the project. And then it fell behind a cabinet, so it never got submitted. So it is finally time to close it out this evening.
Okay.
Did you get to sign these? I didn't.
No, we did not.
There you go. Do you want to talk a little, just give a little overview of what the project entailed?
So it had been two houses previously that were very dilapidated. We tore those down
Wait,
and
what was that?
installed two new houses that, you know, allowed more space between the properties, between the structures. And, you know, I guess, I don't know what else I need to say about it. You know, we stayed within the numbers for how much porous ground or whatever you.
Yeah, impervious
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, so, stayed within those boundaries and, you know, planted trees and you guys still owe me a tree, but there would be no place to put it.
I'm sorry, could we get just your name for the record?
I'm sorry, Nancy Castle.
Okay. All right.
So that's that, the 911 Fifth Avenue. They were all set. And then the other one, the 25 Kingston's, I haven't actually received the request for certificate of compliance, so I'm not gonna issue the certificate of compliance. But they should be coming forward in the next month or so. They had proposed additional work, and they realized they had open orders, so they'll be closing those, and then potentially proposing additional work if they have money left over after all of that. And then the other one will be 285-1723 for 29R Rockwell Drive. This was for the construction of, I believe, a home. The home was never built, so this is an invalid certificate of compliance for order expired. They will probably be coming before us again in the next few months because they would like to install a fence around the property, and how they should do that, so.
Okay.
So that's all the certificates?
Yep, just the two.
I had one question on 101 North Quinsigamon Ave. Do we have any updates on that?
So I reached out to, or Vishal reached out to me, the homeowner is Vishal. He reached out to me, they will be filing, they were unfortunately away, so could not file for the August meeting. They will be filing for the September meeting. A notification of violation letter was sent to him on July 23rd because of the tremendous amount of sediment that was kind of sitting on the slopes. I think they were initially using it as like slopes to get their tiny machine down to pick up the retaining wall that had fallen into the water. But they were humongous piles of dirt that had a high potential for falling into the lake. I issued a notification of violation letter. He was supposed to tell his contractor, and it was relayed to me that he would tell his contractor but I don't think that has happened, so I don't know.
I
if it's
haven't seen any
contractors.
work going on over there the past few days, if that helps. So
Has any erosion control been installed at all?
I haven't noticed that.
This is the neighbor, she might also be able to speak to it.
Sumner from 97, 99, North Quinsigamond Ave. Things are pretty much the same as they have been all along, except that there's been a lot of rain and
Emergency certificate.
and the silt fence itself is collapsed on on my side. Also.
Okay.
Perhaps you can send him another email and ask him to put up some more fence.
Yes, I was planning a site visit for later this week to go. I had relayed to him all of the erosion control that needed to be installed, because with the size of the dirt piles on the property, we had recommended straw wattles be installed at the base of each of them, so that sediment would not make its way into the water, and then also that a larger section of silt fence be installed in the water to prevent any erosion that did make its way, or any rubble from the failing retaining wall to make its way into the lake. The silt fence has not been restored, and it has not been enlarged to encompass, because the retaining walls butt up against each other. Anne's concern is that her retaining wall may fail as well, so the silt fence should be enlarged, and then probably a straw bale put inside of the silt fence to cover any additional, yes, we're still here.
So can we issue a fine if they're continually ignoring
The violation
violations?
letter? I'll have to look at the time period for fining. There's a 15-day period that starts.
with a certificate of mailing or something?
Yes, and I'm not sure. So yeah, if it was issued on July 23rd, we are outside of that window. But yeah, I'm not sure. We just got our fine books.
Well, maybe-
Andy found some, Andy found some to order, so our
Okay.
fine books are fresh.
Maybe in
And-
this next notice that you send, you could say if it's not attended to in the period of time that we're supposed to, that's allowed.
Yeah.
Maybe say you will be subject to a fine.
Yeah,
That way,
I would.
he really
I
needs to
will-
do something.
Yes, especially if he does not meet the application deadline for the September meeting.
Correct.
Right.
And nothing's gonna grow after that, and it's going to be open all
Be
winter.
a mess over
Yeah.
there.
Okay. All right, is that it?
Do you need anything else from me?
Thank you.
You're all set.
You're all set. Your certificate of compliance will be issued. Would you like that
Okay.
mailed to you, or would you like to pick it up?
No, you can mail it.
Okay. I will.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Anything else come before the board?
Updates, correspondence.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Have a good night.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. It's a real guy.